They called it a family contribution. I want to start there because the language matters, because the word contribution is the specific word chosen by people who understand that what they're asking for requires a frame that makes refusal seem like selfishness rather than self-preservation. A contribution implies community. It implies shared purpose. It implies that the person contributing has been consulted and has agreed and is giving willingly from abundance toward a common good. None of those things were true. My name is Adaora. I am 31 years old. On a Sunday evening in April, my mother-in-law Josephine sat across from me at the dining room table of the house where my husband Kofi and I had lived for 8 months, and she told me, with the specific composed authority of a woman who had been rehearsing the conversation, that the family had decided I would contribute 50% of my monthly salary to support my sister-in-law Brianna's living expenses. Brianna was 26 years old and had been living in the family's second property, a 2-bedroom apartment 2 miles from the main house, for 3 years without contributing to its maintenance. She was between jobs in the specific way of someone who had been between jobs for 3 years and who had, across those 3 years, developed a relationship with being between jobs that had stopped being a temporary condition and had become a permanent arrangement that required external funding. The family takes care of each other, Josephine said. I understand that, I said. You are family now, she said. I am, I said. Then you will understand, she said, that Brianna needs stability. And stability requires resources. And you are the one in this house with the resources. I looked at Josephine. She held my gaze with the specific confidence of a woman who had made this kind of request before and had not been refused. I looked at my husband. Kofi was sitting at the end of the table with his hands flat on the surface and his eyes on the tablecloth, and the specific posture of a man who has been told what this conversation was going to contain and who has not found the words to address his position before the conversation began. Or, I said. Josephine's expression did not change. The house is in the family's name, she said. That was the or. Before I tell you what I did, I need to tell you who I was, because who I was is why they miscalculated what I would do. I had grown up in a household where my parents, both Nigerian American, both professionals who had built their stability from nothing across 20 years of deliberate patient work, had taught me 2 things about money that they considered inseparable. The first, earn it honestly and completely, without apology for its existence. The second, never give it under pressure, because money given under pressure is not generosity, it is the payment of a debt you never agreed to owe. I was a data analyst. I had been one for 6 years, working for a healthcare organization that processed large population health datasets to identify intervention opportunities in underserved communities. The work was not glamorous in the way of work that produces visible immediate outcomes. It was the specific patient work of someone who understood that the most important patterns are almost never the ones that announce themselves, and that finding them requires the particular discipline of someone who is willing to look at the same data from 30 different angles before declaring that they have understood it. I was very good at this. My monthly salary was $4,800 after taxes. 50% was $2,400. I had, before marrying Kofi, maintained a savings account, an investment account, and a small emergency fund with the same organized attention I brought to my professional work. My parents had reviewed my financial structure when I was 25 and had said it was sound. I had been building it for 4 years. $2,400 a month would not merely reduce my savings capacity. It would eliminate it. It would also, and I want to be precise about this, because precision is important, constitute a transfer of my earned income to support the lifestyle of a person I barely knew, under threat of losing the roof over my head. This was not a family contribution. This was coercion with a warm word placed over it. I had grown up being taught to recognize the difference. I recognized it immediately. What I needed was to respond to it correctly, not from anger, not from fear, but from the specific, clear position of someone who has been told something that requires a considered and complete answer. I called my mother that night. My mother was 58 years old, Nigerian American, and had the specific quality of a woman who had spent 30 years being the most organized person in every room she entered and who had, across those 30 years, Developed the particular sharp, warm patience of someone who has been asked to respond to difficult things and who has learned that the first response is never the best one. She answered on the first ring. Tell me, she said. I told her everything. The Sunday dinner. Josephine's rehearsed composure. The 50% figure. The or at the end of the sentence. Kofi's hands flat on the tablecloth. She was quiet through all of it, the specific listening quiet of a woman who is assembling something as she receives it. When I finished, she said, the house is in the family's name. Yes, I said. Not in Kofi's name specifically, she said. The family's name, I said. A family trust, I believe. We moved in 8 months ago. We haven't discussed the legal structure. That needs to be discussed, she said. Before anything else. Yes, I said. Ada Ora, she said. I need to ask you something, and I need the honest answer. Yes, I said. Where is Kofi in this, she said. Not where was he at the table. Where is he? I thought about the tablecloth. I don't know, I said. He hasn't said. He needs to say, she said. Before you respond to anything Josephine has said, you need to know where your husband is. Because what happens next depends entirely on whether he is standing beside you or sitting at the end of the table looking at the tablecloth. I sat with this. What do I do tonight? I said. Tonight, she said, you do nothing. You go back inside and you are pleasant and you do not engage with the demand. You tell them you need time to review your financial commitments before making any decisions. This is reasonable and it gives you nothing to take back. And tomorrow? I said. Tomorrow, she said, you call Nkechi. Nkechi was my parents' family attorney. She had handled every significant legal matter in our family for 15 years. Already? I said. Information, my mother said. Not action. You need to know where you stand before you decide what standing looks like. Kofi came to the bedroom at 10:14 p.m. I had been reading or performing reading, which is what I do when I need to be in a position that communicates that I am occupied without being unavailable, which communicates that I am waiting for a conversation without demanding it. He sat on the edge of the bed. I set the book down. He looked at his hands for a moment, the same hands that had been flat on the tablecloth, the same posture, the specific quality of a man who has been circling something he needs to say and is finally arriving at the saying. I didn't know she was going to use that language tonight, he said. The house language, I said. Yes, he said. I knew she wanted to discuss Brianna. I didn't know she was going to frame it as a condition of our housing, I said. Yes, he said. I looked at my husband, 34 years old, the man I had married 18 months ago with the specific conviction that his fundamental decency was not in question. His fundamental decency was still not in question. What was in question was the particular thing that decency sometimes fails to prevent, the specific paralysis of a man who loves his mother and loves his wife and has not yet decided what to do when those two loves point in opposite directions. Kofi, I said. I need to ask you one question, and I need the honest answer. All right, he said. Do you think I should do it? I said. He was quiet for a long time. No, he said. Then I need you to say that, I said. Not to me. To your mother. It's complicated, he said. Brianna is. Kofi, I said. I understand Brianna is your sister and that her situation is something you care about and that your parents' anxiety about her is real. I'm not asking you to abandon your family. I am asking you to make clear to your family that what was asked of me tonight is not something you are asking of me. He looked at his hands. If I don't, he said. Then I know where you are, I said. And I will act accordingly. He nodded slowly. I'll speak to her tomorrow, he said. Thank you, I said. I picked up my book. He sat for another moment. Then he lay down. We did not speak again that night, but the silence had a different quality than the tablecloth silence. It was the silence of two people who have said the necessary things and are now in the specific difficult space of waiting for those things to produce their consequence. Nkechi Adeyemi had been practicing family and asset law for 22 years. She was 53 years old, Nigerian American, and had the particular quality of someone who had spent 2 decades watching families navigate the specific legal and financial entanglements that arise when love and money occupy the same space without clear agreements about how each one moves. She answered my call at 8:15 Monday morning. Ada Ora, she said. Your mother called me last night. I know, I said. Tell me everything, she said. I told her. When I finished, she asked 3 questions. Is your name on any document related to the property you're living in? Not that I know of, I said. Has any financial contribution you've made to the household been documented? Rent, utilities, groceries, maintenance? I've been paying half of all household expenses, I said. Transferred from my account monthly. I have records. Good, she said. 3rd question. Has the demand been made in writing? No, I said. Verbal. Sunday dinner. Then here is your position, she said. If your name is not on the property and the property is held in a family trust, your occupancy is dependent on the trust's goodwill, which means the threat has a legal dimension that you cannot ignore. However, no one can compel you to make financial contributions to a third party. The demand itself has no legal standing. They can ask you to leave. They cannot make you pay. I sat with this. If they ask us to leave? I said. Then you and Kofi find alternative housing, she said. Which is a significant disruption but not a catastrophe, especially if you have the emergency fund I know your parents have always insisted on. I have 4 months of expenses saved, I said. Then you have runway, she said. Ada Ora, you are not trapped. You are uncomfortable. Those are different things. Yes, I said. Here is what I want you to do, she said. Send me the records of every household payment you have made in the past 8 months. I want a clear picture of your financial contribution to this property. And I want you to do nothing in response to the demand until we have spoken again. All right, I said. And Ada Ora, she said. Yes, I said. Do not give them the money. Josephine found me in the kitchen on Tuesday morning. Kofi had spoken to her on Monday. He had told me this in the specific quiet of the car, driving home from work, in the tone of a man who has done something difficult and is carrying the doing of it carefully. He had told her that the financial demand was not something he was going to ask me to fulfill and that the conversation needed to happen differently. Josephine had listened. And she had come to find me in the kitchen on Tuesday morning, which told me that listening to Kofi had not changed what she intended to do, only the person she intended to do it with. She came in while I was making coffee. She sat at the kitchen table. She did not speak immediately. I poured 2 cups. I set one in front of her. I sat across from her. You called an attorney, she said. She said it as a statement rather than a question, which told me she had either spoken to Kofi or had made an accurate inference from the quality of my composure since Sunday. I called my family's attorney for information, I said. Yes, that is not how this family handles things, she said. I understand that, I said. But I am also my parents' daughter. And my parents handle significant financial matters with clear information. She looked at her coffee cup. I didn't mean it as a threat, she said. The house. I was explaining the reality. I understand the reality, I said. I also understand my reality. I have worked for 6 years for my salary. I have built savings that represent years of discipline. What was asked of me on Sunday would eliminate my financial stability to fund someone else's comfort. I cannot agree to that. Brianna is family, she said. I know, I said. And I am willing to discuss what support looks like for Brianna. But support is different from an unconditional transfer of half my income under threat of losing my home. She looked at me. You are very direct, she said. My mother raised me to be, I said. She was quiet for a moment. What would you consider, she said. It was the first time she had asked me a question rather than presented me with a decision. A structured conversation, I said. With Kofi. About what Brianna actually needs. What is sustainable? What is fair to everyone in this family, including me? She looked at her coffee. All right, she said. I met Brianna for the first time, truly met her, not the surface meeting of family gatherings on a Wednesday afternoon at the apartment 2 miles away. Kofi had arranged it. Not as a strategy, as the specific instinct of a man who understood that the conversation about Brianna had been happening entirely without Brianna in it, which was itself the problem beneath the problem. She was 26 years old and had the particular quality of someone who had been managed for so long that she had stopped managing herself, not from laziness, which is what the family's framing implied, but from the specific learned helplessness of someone who has never been required to develop the skill because the skill has always been supplied by someone else. She opened the door in the specific way of someone who has been told that this visit was happening and who has decided to be present for it without enthusiasm. We sat at her kitchen table. The apartment was clean but carrying the particular quality of a space that has been maintained at the minimum rather than invested in. They want you to pay for this, she said. Not as accusation, as statement. She already knew. Of course she knew. They asked, I said. I didn't ask, she said. I know, I said. She looked at the table. I had a job, she said. 18 months ago. It ended. I've been applying. What's the barrier? I said. She looked at me. No one had apparently asked her this question directly. I don't have the certifications I need for the roles I qualify for, she said. The jobs I can get pay less than the apartment costs. The jobs I want require credentials I can't afford to get. I sat with this. What certifications? I said. She told me. The courses cost approximately $1,800 total. Not $2,400 a month. $1,800 once. I looked at Brianna, 26 years old, 3 years between jobs, a family that had been funding her stasis without addressing its cause. What if, I said, instead of a monthly transfer, we talked about a one-time investment in the specific thing that would make you not need the monthly transfer? She looked at me. They want the monthly, she said. I know what they want, I said. I'm asking what you want. She was quiet for a moment. I want to work, she said. It was the first true thing anyone in this family had said about Brianna's situation. The family meeting happened on Saturday. Kofi had convened it, not at Josephine's request and not at mine, but from the specific initiative of a man who had spent a week moving between 2 women's positions and who had understood, finally, that the space between the positions needed to be closed by conversation rather than by either woman capitulating to the other. We sat in the main house living room. Josephine. His father Harold, who had been present throughout but had said very little because Harold was the specific kind of man who spoke only when he had decided what to say and had apparently been deciding for the entire week. Kofi. Brianna. Me. I had brought Nkechi's notes, not to present them as legal weaponry, but because I had learned from my mother that the most useful thing you can bring to a difficult conversation is accurate information organized clearly. Kofi opened. He said that the conversation needed to be different from the one that had happened on Sunday. That Sunday's conversation had put his wife in a position that was not fair and had not produced a solution, it had produced a standoff. That a standoff was not what anyone in the room actually wanted. Harold spoke then. He said that the family's concern for Brianna was real and that the approach to addressing it had perhaps not been the right one. This was the most honest sentence Harold had spoken in the meeting and possibly in the previous week. Josephine looked at the floor briefly and then looked up. I spoke. I said that I had spoken with Brianna on Wednesday, that I understood the barrier she was facing, that I had done some research. I laid out the proposal, the one-time certification investment rather than the monthly transfer, the specific courses, the cost, the timeline, the employment outcomes for people who completed that certification track. I had researched the employment outcomes because I was a data analyst and researching outcomes was what I did. Brianna looked at her hands. Josephine looked at the paper I had set on the table. $1,800, she said. Once, I said. Not monthly. Once. Harold looked at Kofi. Kofi looked at me. I'll match it, Kofi said. $900 each. The room was quiet for a moment. Brianna looked up. I want to do it, she said. Brianna enrolled in the certification program in May. I want to tell you this plainly and then tell you what it required from me and what it produced, because the story of what changed is both simpler and more complex than the confrontation that preceded it. What it required from me, $900, which I gave without resentment because it was given in the context of a decision I had participated in rather than under the pressure of a demand I had been given no choice about. The difference between those two things is everything. The same money given differently is a different action. Voluntary contribution to a specific purpose with a measurable outcome is generosity. Coercion dressed as family obligation is something else entirely, and I had refused to confuse the two. Brianna completed the first course in June. She passed the certification exam in July. She had a job offer by August, not the job of her eventual ambition, but a starting point. A door that opened because she now had the credential to open it. She called me the day the offer came. Not Josephine. Me. I got it, she said. I know you would, I said. You didn't know that, she said. I knew you wanted to work, I said. That's usually enough. She was quiet for a moment. Thank you, she said. Thank you for telling me what you actually needed, I said. Nobody had asked. Josephine changed across those months in the specific incremental way that people change when they have witnessed something that reorganizes their understanding of a situation they thought they had already understood. She did not apologize for Sunday's dinner in the direct form of the word apology. She apologized in the form that some people are capable of through action, through the gradual shift in how she spoke to me, through the Sunday 2 months later when she handed me coffee without being asked and sat beside me rather than across from me. I received it. Not as closure, as a beginning. Kofi and I found an apartment of our own in September. Not from conflict, from the specific mutual understanding of two people who had learned something about themselves and each other across those months and who understood that building their own life required their own foundation. We left well. The family is intact. Different, but intact. Here is what I kept from a Sunday dinner and a figure written on no paper and a threat wrapped in the word family and everything that followed. I kept my mother's 2 rules. Earn it honestly and completely without apology for its existence. Never give it under pressure, because money given under pressure is not generosity, it is the payment of a debt you never agreed to owe. I had known these rules since I was old enough to understand what money was. I had tested them on Sunday evening and they had held. They will hold again when they need to. Some things are worth knowing before the moment that requires knowing them, and these 2 things are the most important financial principles I possess. I kept Nkechi's distinction. You are not trapped, you are uncomfortable. Those are different things. I have applied this to every difficult situation since. Trapped means there is no exit and no agency. Uncomfortable means the exit exists and the path to it involves something you would prefer not to do. The discomfort is real. The exit is also real. Knowing the difference is the beginning of every good decision. I kept the question I asked Brianna, what do you actually want? Not what the family wants for you. Not what the arrangement has become. What do you want? She said she wanted to work. That single true sentence produced an $1,800 investment and a job offer and a phone call in August and a beginning. I kept Kofi. Not without difficulty. The tablecloth moment required its own accounting, and we had that accounting over several honest conversations that were not easy and that produced a marriage that is more honest than it was before Sunday. He said he would speak to his mother. He did. He matched my $900 without being asked. He found the apartment. He held my hand when we signed the lease. He chose me. Not loudly. In the specific quiet accumulation of choices that tell you more about a person than any single declaration. I am 31 years old. They called it a family contribution. I called it coercion. I called my mother. I called an attorney. I called my husband by his best self. I sat across from a 26-year-old and asked her what she actually needed. 50% of my salary would have changed nothing. The right question changed everything. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever been asked to give something under pressure and had to find the language to refuse without losing what mattered, I want to hear about it in the comments. What was the demand that taught your own value? Stories like this one stay alive because people carry them forward. Share this with someone who needs it today. And if you would like more stories told honestly, the way things worth keeping deserve to be told, subscribe. We will be here.